got a TV screen on and we don't have a mayor. Correction, we don't up here, I'm sorry.
Billy, would you see if Richard there in the hall? See if Richard Torres is in the hall, please.
Live from Haltom City. We're not on. We are. Yes, he is transmitting. Hi, family.
Ladies and gentlemen, the March 25th, 2002 meeting of the Haltom City Council is called to order. We welcome those of you who are here in the council chambers tonight, as well as those of you who are watching over Channel 7, Cable Channel 7 HCTV. Our first item of business tonight is our invocation and our Pledge of Allegiance. Councilmember Hurley, I believe you have a guest here for the invocation.
We have a guest tonight, Dr. Eldridge Cullum, who's pastor of Somerville Baptist Church, who will give the invocation.
If you will, let's stand for the invocation and the pledge.
Let us pray. O sovereign Lord of this universe, the creator of this world, we thank you, Lord, that you are the Almighty God. We thank you, Lord, that you love us and you care for us, and you are very much interested in what is going on in our lives. And Lord, you're interested in what's going on here in Haltom City, and want to be a very vital part of that. And Lord, I thank you for this city council meeting tonight. We thank you. We want to begin this meeting by acknowledging your presence here and seeking wisdom from you, Father, and all the decisions that will be made tonight. Lord, we're very grateful that this coming Sunday celebrates the biggest day for the Christian faith, and that is the resurrection of our Lord and our Savior Jesus Christ, the Son of God, who died on the cross and who rose again, so that through faith in him we can have forgiveness of sin. And just like you raised Jesus from the dead, Father, to give him life eternal, we know that through faith in Christ we can have eternal life in heaven as well. And we thank you, Lord, that Jesus is the King of Kings and Lord of Lords today, and his presence is here tonight. And so, Lord, we beseech your wisdom, and we thank you for your presence here. In Jesus' precious holy name I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Dr. Cullum. And to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight, we have Chi Mai, and I believe he has a couple of guests with him. If you will come forward, please, and lead us in the pledge, and then introduce the two scouts who are with you. Will you face the flag with me, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, if you will, ladies and gentlemen, be seated. And Chi, We're very happy to have you here tonight, and I believe you're with Boy Scout Troop number 336.
Yes.
Would you like to introduce the two scouts who are here with you tonight?
All right. In the back, we have Mr. Nick Weber. He just recently got his Eagle Scout award. And over here, we have Mr. Garrett Storms.
Gentlemen, it's our pleasure to have you. I believe you were here at the last council meeting, and you were working on a badge, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, last meeting I was working on communications.
Great. Well, thank you very much for being here tonight, and come back every time you get a chance to any of our council meetings. Members of the council, any further comments?
I'd just like to have Nick come up where we can get him on camera. He's standing back there in the back, shy.
Good plan.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate you being here. The next section of our meeting has to do with presentations. I have the first presentation to make to Ms. Alice Platt. And Alice, if you'll be coming forward and join me at the podium, and then Ms. Fran Burns has a couple of presentations she wants to make. This lady you see before you tonight is all smiles, and she's that way every time you see her. For the last 20 years, Alice Platt has given unselfishly to this community. She's volunteered in a number of capacities, most recently the Volunteer Services Board. Alice has resigned recently, and the reason for that, and I'll let her tell us a little bit more about it in just a moment, she's going on to bigger and better things. And we're excited for her, and we're very, very proud of what she has done. And it is my privilege tonight to present this plaque of recognition to you, Alice, presented to Alice Platt in recognition of your 20 years of outstanding volunteer service and commitment to the city of Haltom City, 1982 through 2002. So it's my pleasure to present this to you on behalf of the council and the staff here at City Hall. Thank you for what you have done, what you still are doing, and what you're going to be doing, continuing to do in the future. If you would like to address the council, and then
I thank the council for this. And I just want you to know what I am doing and why I'm coming off the board. I'm a secretary on the Citizens Police Academy of Northern Texas. That's 32 cities that join together. I'm secretary on that. Secretary for AARP at the Senior Center. I'm the president of the Citizens Police Academy alumni here in Haltom City. And I'm going to continue to work on the volunteer board, just helping out whenever they go out to do anything. It's just that I'm not going to be at their meetings, but I'm continuing it. And I continue to do anything else that the city needs, besides working at the police station.
Alice, thank you very much, but don't leave. We have more to come. Councilmember Williams, and then Chief Hammett, did you have a comment you want to make?
I would like to thank you on behalf of the council. Some of them weren't here when you began. I wasn't here when you began. Ms. Platt also works over in our police department. That's the reason the chief's going to come up here. When I first got involved in politics, I thought, well, if I'm going to get involved, I need to go to the Volunteer Service Board and all the rest of the boards. And I started making some of the functions that were going on, and every time I turned around, this lady was there. I did not know. I knew her name was Alice Platt, but I didn't know what part she played. And then after I got more into the city and found out how important part she was, I'm going to say something that the mayor didn't say. Miss Platt doesn't drive. And to do all this volunteering and taking care of all the stuff that she does, I've never heard her beg for a ride. I've never heard her complain. And I've never seen anything but a smile on her face. And so, Alice, I want to tell you, I love you, and I thank you for what I do for our city, and keep it up.
Thank you. Chief.
Mr. Williams, not much I can add to what you just said, except that I just want to to tell everybody that if you walk into the police station, you're going to see Alice sitting there, and she is going to have a smile on her face, and she's going to greet you, and she's going to help you. In fact, I go in that door every morning, and she's always got a kind word and a smile. And even when I'm leaving for lunch, even if I'm not quite ready to go to lunch, she tells me to have a nice lunch. But anyway, that's just something you don't see every day, and I'm just pleased to have Alice involved with the police organization. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
The next two presentations tonight are to be made by Fran Burns. The first is a proclamation regarding Smartscape. Fran, would you like to come forward and tell us about Smartscape?
Thank you very much, Mayor. Smartscape is actually it's an interactive CD program that the North Central Texas Council of Governments put together in cooperation with the Texas Agricultural Extension Service and some other people that are involved in Texas native landscaping. And it's a really easy to use program. Even I can do it. And it is a way of looking at landscaping other than the traditional way of planting plants that require a lot of care and a lot of water, a lot of fertilizer and pesticides, and turning to the native plants and adapted plants that grow well in this area of Texas. So we have these for free, and in fact, a week ago, we presented a Smartscape seminar, and we were really surprised that 16 people came out in the torrential downpour to learn about smartscaping. So we hope to continue spreading the word, and it's part of the stormwater management plan to cut down on our usage of water and protect our water supply. So I have these available if any of the council members would like to take them with them. And would you like me to read this proclamation, Mayor, or can I just give it to you?
Yes, please.
March, Smartscape Month in Haltom City. Whereas the quality of life in a community is enriched by the appreciation and the enhancement of its environment, and whereas the City of Haltom City, in order to demonstrate responsible practices with regard to protecting our environment and our local water supply, supports the Smartscape program, and whereas our city has been involved in a comprehensive stormwater management plan in partnership with the North Central Texas Council of Governments, and whereas that plan involves educating the public, utilizing the Smartscape program as a means of water conservation, especially with regard to landscaping. Now therefore, I, Calvin White, Mayor of Haltom City, do hereby proclaim March, Smartscape Month in Haltom City, and do encourage all residents and businesses to protect our water supply by learning to use this practical means of landscaping their properties while beautifying our community. So thank you very much, Mayor. And the second part of what I'm here tonight for is to spread the word about our Great American Cleanup Program. And to do that, one of our board members, Betty Porter, is here. So I'm going to let her take over. And she's going to introduce a new part of our program as well, Ben the Bear.
Good evening, Council.
Hi. Good evening.
How are y'all? I would like to introduce the newest member of our beautification board. If I could ask Ben to come forward. This is our newest mascot member. His name is Ben. Ben is short for Beautiful Environment Needed. And you all know that Ben is needed in Haltom City. Ben was created from our board by one of our members. We had suggestions taken from our board members, and Diane McGee actually came up with Ben and the logo. And I'm not going to tell you who's inside here, but they're very close to this project. But I'm also here tonight to issue a challenge to the council and the citizens of Haltom City. We have our Great American Cleanup, which is going to be on April 6th. David Harper is chairman of our board, and he is going to be handing out some items for the council members. And I don't know when it was the last time that you actually got out and picked up somebody else's cigarette butt, but that's what we do a lot of. And on April 6th, we're going to issue or have a cleanup, and you can have a free lunch. You can have a free lunch. We're going to meet in one of our neighboring city parks after the cleanup, and you'll be fed for free. You'll get gloves and bags to use, and you can choose a spot that you would like to clean up, and you can bring your garbage to somebody else's city for that day, and they will take it from you, and then they will serve you lunch. But research has shown that in this area, this northeast area of Fort Worth, we spend about $1 million a year in paying somebody to pick up trash. And the most of this is paid by you. Well, it is paid by you because it's tax money. But most of these people are males and females under the age of 24. So that means us as parents need to be teaching our children not to throw their trash out, because somebody's got to pick it up. If any of you were at the Spring Fest on Saturday, our board sponsored what we call our Liberty Garden. If you haven't been down to Haltom Road Park, our city gardener, Carl, built a frame of the American flag, and we had kids come in throughout the day and plant red, white, and blue petunias in our flag Liberty Garden, and it's right in front of the sign at Haltom Road Park. And because we agreed to do that, the Liberty Garden is in response or in memory of people that died in September. And our city was given a rototiller from Troy Built. Is that right? Troy Built, I think. I don't know anything about garden tools, I'm sorry, but Troy Built sounds good. But anyway, we have a brand new rototiller that we get to use in our city, our board gets to use. And I would also like to invite you to come to the transfer station. If anybody, do y'all know where the transfer station is? Everybody, our new city manager may know where it is. But we're going to have a half-price day. Our Great American Cleanup, like I said, is April 6th. We also are sponsoring the Images of Haltom City photo contest, and I think this is going to be our 14th year. We're going to have a free dump day, April 27th. And as always, remember to recycle, please. When we're out picking up our local spot, our beautification board sponsors, our spot is on Denton Highway from Kmart to 820. And sometimes we use community service people to help us. And we were out there a week ago, and we had a lady that had gotten a fine in our city, but she actually lived in another city, which is about 300 miles away. And she came back and worked that day helping us pick up trash to alleviate her fine. And where else can you make that much money in one day? So y'all need to come and help us. Thank you very much. If anybody wants to help pick up cigarette butts, we have a butt-mobile. I don't know if y'all knew that or not, but the car is donated by the city, and it's being totally covered by cigarette butts that have already been used. It's going to look lovely, so you need to come and see it too. Thank you very much, and y'all support Ben, please.
Ben and Betty. Ben and Betty, thank you for being here tonight. When I saw Ben come in, I was watching TV when the New York Stock Exchange closed today, and it wasn't a very good day, and standing up beside, when they rang the bell, beside the president, was someone dressed to look just like Ben, a bear market. So I'm glad our Ben it has a positive message to bring rather than what I saw earlier today. Thank you very much. We move now to the consent agenda. This is items number 4 through 9 on the agenda you have before you. All of these items on this consent agenda are considered to be self-explanatory and will be enacted by the council with one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these, and approval of this consent agenda authorizes the city manager to implement each item in accordance with the way it's posted. Councilmember Avery.
Mayor, I make a motion we approve the consent agenda.
Councilmember Hurley.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? If you would, gentlemen, register your vote. And the motion passes. We come now to the Visitor Citizens Forum. Ms. Harris, do we have any yellow cards that have been turned in? Okay, there being none, we move forward then to the public hearings. The first item we have before us, I think Mr. Pliska is going to introduce, and then I'll open the public hearing before we take action. Councilmember Williams, do you have something before we?
Yes, Mayor. The item that's fixing to come up is within 200 foot of the property that I own, and so I've already signed a statement recusing myself from this.
Okay.
So I will leave the room and won't be a part of it.
Mr. Pliska.
Thank you, Mayor, council members, City Manager Torres. The first item is CU 001-02, consideration and/or action regarding the application of Mr. Don Pfeiffer for a zoning change request from the C3 Commercial District to the C4 Commercial District with a conditional use permit to operate an auto paint and body shop on lots 1 through 3, Block 2, Earl's Edition, located on the northwest corner of Northeast 28th and Field Streets, containing approximately .6322 acres of land, locally known as 4931 Northeast 28th Street. On February 26, 2002, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted to approve this request for a conditional use permit and with site plan approval and a zoning change request from the C3 Commercial District to the C4 Commercial District, with the stipulation that Mr. Pfeiffer provide a screening fence along the entire north property line and that a 10-foot landscape strip be put in along the portion of the north property line that abuts the duplex residential district, and that the screening fence be continued along the Field Street side of the property with some landscaping. That's a brief summation of this item.
Okay, I'll open the public hearing at this time. We'll call first of all on Mr. Pfeiffer. Would you like to say anything or just be available to answer questions from the council? If you will, Mr. Pfeiffer, give us your name and address for the record, please.
Mayor, council, first off, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Don D. Pfeiffer, reside at 8360 Thornhill Drive, North Richland Hills, Texas. I'm here on behalf of my stepmother, Kay Pfeiffer, requesting this zoning change to come into compliance with the ordinances that y'all previously passed, I believe, last year, and bring the property into compliance. I make myself available for any questions that y'all may have. Thank you very much.
Members of the council, any questions for Mr. Pfeiffer before he leaves the podium? I don't believe we have any questions. Thank you, Mr. Pfeiffer. Members of the audience, anyone here wishing to speak either for or against the request by Mr. Pfeiffer? Okay, there being no one to speak either for or against, I'll close the public hearing and I move now to the corresponding motion. Gentlemen. Councilmember Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Move to approve 02002-01215.
Councilmember Henderson.
That's first, second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion before us? If you would, register your vote. And that carries with Councilmember Williams recusing himself. Item number 11.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council. This is item Z-005-02, and this is consideration and/or action regarding the application of Hassan Kali for a zoning change request, MF2 Multifamily Residential District, to the C2 Commercial District in order to develop the site. Lot A, Fossil Ridge Edition, Phase 3, containing approximately 1.03 acres of land, located on the east side of North Beach Street, located in the 5700 block of North Beach Street, and to amend the comprehensive land use plan to reflect this change in zoning. The site is designated as low-density residential according to the city's comprehensive land use plan. A commercial designation would not allow for this type of use on the property, therefore the requested rezoning would not be in compliance with the plan. 5 neighbors came out to the planning and zoning meeting to express their desire to keep the property as it is. All individuals stated that there was no room for an access easement to the site, that it would cause an increase in traffic in the area, lower their property values, that they were told by the developer of their subdivision that this site would never be developed, and they had bought their homes here for the view. They would prefer that this site not be allowed to be developed. The applicant, Mr. Kali, was not present at this meeting. The recommendation was such, the Planning and Zoning Commission at their meeting on February 26, 2002 voted unanimously to deny application Z-005-02.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pliska, for your summary and your presentation of this case. I will open the public hearing at this time. Mr. Khalil, are you in the audience? Would you like to address the council, or would you just prefer to be available to answer any questions the council may have? Please. If you will, please come forward and give us your name and address for the record, and then whatever comments you have, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council member. My name is Hassan Kali. I live in 43 Bounty Road West in Pembroke, Texas. I'm here for the change of the zoning or rezoning of this lot. Let me explain a little bit about me briefly. First of all, I apologize for me not coming last hearing. I had an employee had a bad accident. I had to take him to the hospital, and I could not make it. That's why I did not come, and I apologize for that. In general, I'm a real estate investor, and also I build businesses. I built several C-stores and also a 10-minute oil change, and I have a car dealership in the west side of Fort Worth. I bought this property. I brought with me a map, first of all, just to show the council where the property is. As far as I know, there's no houses around this property. Next to it, only a daycare center. It's exactly on 5960 North Beach Street. And I want to develop and improve this land, and hopefully also the community. Either way it goes, it don't make any difference to me. What really, when I looked at it, from a business point of view, I think commercially it's a lot better than to be like residential or whatever the property is zoned at this moment. Like I said, I've been in retail business, and I know property when I look at it, what it be used for. And I believe this one very, very valuable to be as a commercial property, as a retail shopping center. What we're going to do with it, we're going to build really small shopping center. It's not a huge one. I don't think that property can accommodate big one. It's just like 8,000 square foot. And what we're going to put in it, it's like upscale furniture store, and I'm talking to a company in Atlanta, Georgia. We're going to put the bakery in it, and what you serve coffee and bakery, and also like delicacy, like sandwiches and things like that. That in general, I'm here to address anybody concerned regarding this. And like I said, I'm open, for any logic and common sense regarding this property. That's all about to say.
Okay, if you would remain at the podium for just a moment, please.
Sure.
Members of the council, any questions for Mr. Khalil? Okay, I believe there are no questions. Mr. Khalil, thank you very much for your presentation. The council will proceed at this point.
Thank you very much.
And we'll get some input from members of the audience. The public hearing is still open. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak for, well, first of all, for. Okay, we don't have anyone wishing to speak for. Do we have anyone in the audience wishing to speak against? Councilmember Henderson, while Ms. Dunn is coming forward, did you have?
I just had a question for staff. We sent out notices to 200-foot radius on this property?
Yes,
okay.
we did. We sent out, excuse me. Twelve property
notices.
owners were notified.
Okay.
And we did receive, again, 5 people in opposition at the meeting.
5 of the 12.
Correct.
Okay.
Anything further, Councilmember Henderson?
That's all, Mayor. Thanks.
Ms. Dunn, if you will give us your name and address and tell us where your property is located in relation to this piece of property, please.
Linda Dunn, 4000 Falcon Ridge. And our property is, we live in a home next door to property that backs up to that triangular piece of property that Mr. Khalil owns.
So you are within 200 feet
I believe so.
Of that property?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Okay. My main concern with that property being developed is that it's so close to the intersection of Beach and Silver Sage that's already a very dangerous intersection. And there have been wrecks there, and there probably will continue to be. There's no red light there. And that's my main concern is access from North Beach onto his property. Whatever is built there, there will have to be access there. And the children's courtyard, their access is onto Silver Sage. So there's no problem with entrance to the courtyard. It's, but it would be very dangerous for people trying to come off of North Beach onto that property. If access could even be put there, I don't even know how it could be put there. If you've been out to look at that property, there's just a very limited access to that property because of the creek and the banister that is coming from the bridge onto in that road area. So that's my main concern is safety, as well as the fact that my granddaughter goes to the children's courtyard, and I really don't want her to have to play next door to a business. The children go out there and play every day. I observed her playing there, and they would be right next to whatever business is built there. And I feel like that would be a danger to the children.
Okay, members of the council, any questions or comments for Ms. Dunn? Thank you, Ms. Dunn. Councilmember Williams.
I've got one. I don't know. When the person gets up here that says what the builder had told them about not being developed on that, I'd like to know which person it was. Or was that you, Ms. Dunn? No. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else in the audience wishing to speak against this request for zoning change? If you will, please give us your name and address for the record.
My name is Jennifer Lasher.
Would you please restate that?
My name is Jennifer Lasher. I'm here on behalf of myself and my husband, Lenny Lasher. We reside at 5784 Falcon Ridge Court. We are within the 200-foot boundary for notification on this. I think we expressed the same concerns that Linda Dunn expressed a moment ago, but I have a couple of different ones as well. Our backyard shares a fence line with the children's courtyard. When we bought that property, with the understanding, we knew that a business was there, but it is open from Monday through Friday from 6 in the morning until 6 in the evening, no weekends. We have no evening noise, we have no weekend noise. No additional traffic comes to that area evenings and weekends. In addition to that, all of us get to enjoy the beautiful Buffalo Ridge Park, and I was just there yesterday. And on the trails, I was very concerned about the amount of debris that I currently see today. While I know that's not a topic for today's council, I also think that any type of business that is going to be established on the creek, as this will be, is going to increase the amount of debris and trash that is already in the creek. In addition to moving any wildlife that already exists there, I have great concerns for any type of business that is on that plot of land because the creek does run very close to it. I have concerns about the fact that if this does get passed and it does get built, I'm very concerned that this piece of North Beach Street may turn into something that looks a little bit like Ruth Snow. I avoid Ruth Snow at all costs. I certainly don't want to live half a block away from one. The increased traffic and noise. Ms. Dunn stated a moment ago that we already have traffic issues. If any of you have seen the plot of land, it appears like a pie-shaped, a slice of pie. I am interested to find out how the 8,000 square foot piece of retail would actually sit on that. Because from what I can see, excuse me, when you stand on it, it's a straight shot down into the creek.
Anything further?
No, that's it.
Members of the council, any questions, comments? Thank you very much. Councilmember Henderson, you turned your light on and then it went off a moment ago. Okay. Yes, would you come forward, please, and give us your name and address for the record, and tell us, as the other two speakers have, where your property is in relation to this property under consideration.
Lisa Mays, and I live at 5776 Falcon Ridge Court. My lot backs directly up to the creek, so there's nothing behind my house, and I'm one of the ones that was told by the developer, and well as when we were deciding to build in this area, we checked with the developer, we also checked with the city, and at that time that land was not owned by Mr. Khalil. It was, I get it all mixed up, but at one point it was owned by the city and then by Birdville ISD and then put up for auction, I guess. I have the same concerns as you've already heard. The access from the bridge. My main concern, I have to say, is the view from our backyard. I don't know if anybody's been out there, but the creek curves right there, and the property in question is pie-shaped, goes straight down into the creek, and from our backyard, the easement actually runs back behind our fence, which is not a solid barrier. It's a wrought iron 4-foot fence, which, again, we were told by the city we couldn't put a stockade fence there because of zoning. It had to be wrought iron because of the concern of beautification of the creek. We already get enormous amounts of pollution and trash from businesses further upstream that every time it rains washes down from businesses like what he's proposing, car washes, lube change things with big dumpsters behind them. You know, the big rains last week, that water came nearly up to our fence. So again, you know, we don't understand how you could even build something on that land because it's not a solid, flat piece of land. And erosion is, you know, we have lots of erosion behind our fence, so that's a concern. And, you know, again, just the pollution, the environment, the safety of the children. Their property is also wrought iron fence. Just lots of the same concerns, and the noise and the crime and our property values. So those are our main concerns.
Okay. Members of the council, any further any questions, comments? Councilmember Williams.
I think she may have been the one I was looking for. You said the developer told you there would be never be anything built there. This is a very weird-shaped piece of property you're talking about. But I just want to warn you and the other people in the audience knows watching on TV. When you buy a piece of property, those builders are in the business to sell you something. We've got a totally different project going on right now that we're addressing. Be careful when you buy property when they tell you that,
right.
because you know there's really no way that they can say if someone else buys it, then whoever else buys it has the right to do something with it.
And we understand that a part of that's our naivety, but our main concern is we did check with the city to see who owned it and what was in question, and we were led to believe by the city that that whole area of Fossil Creek was to be kept as a natural area. You know, therefore there wouldn't be sidewalks put down there, or it would not be cleaned out. It was to be kept a natural environment.
When this went to P&Z, you were present? Some of the neighbors there were present at Planning and Zoning Board?
Yes,
okay.
I was present.
That's what I need to know. Thank you.
Councilmember Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two questions for staff. Issue of flooding has been brought up. Is this land in the floodplain? I didn't notice that.
To actually be specific, I would need to look at the FEMA map panel.
If it is in fact in the floodplain, would that
he wouldn't be allowed to develop it.
Right, it would preclude any development. That would be a good point to check into before any action was taken.
According to the study here, it shows on map panel 285 that it's not.
Not in the floodplain.
It's not shown in the floodplain.
Okay, another question was brought up about traffic. I know that Beach Street is Fort Worth, and we have no control over the lights that are placed or not placed there. As far as city engineer goes, Greg, have you heard any rumblings about the possibility of a red light being installed at the intersection by where the child care facility is in Beach Street?
Not recently. Periodically, I I call Fort Worth Transportation Department. That's how we were able to get the signals at Stanley Keller and at Fossil Creek Boulevard. At that same time, I inquired about Silver Sage as well, and I believe Fort Worth has the ability to do a comprehensive traffic study of the intersection. And at that time, that intersection didn't warrant it, but as you can see, Fossil Creek, Stanley Keller, and oddly enough, Springdale on the south side of town did warrant it.
Yeah.
I don't mind asking their transportation department to look at that issue again.
Certainly, I would like to get that done if we could give staff that directive, regardless of how this case comes out. At some point, a lady mentioned that this is turning into Ruth Snow. I lived down Ruth Snow for 21 years, and I share your fears about Beach Street. Anybody that goes up and down that street will know that it's a mess in the mornings and it's a mess in the afternoons. And sooner or later, that will be an intersection that's going to have a light. I'd like for it to be sooner than later. That's all, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Members of the council, any further questions or comments? Anyone else in the audience wishing to address the council at this time regarding this request? If you would, sir, give us your name and address for the record and tell us where your property stands in relation to the tract under consideration.
My name is Richard North. I reside at 5780 Falcon Ridge Court, directly next door to the Lashers on one side and the Maze on the other side. And of course, the Duns are right next to them. So we're like 4 pods in a row. But I'm also next door to the daycare center. When I share the same concerns as everyone else that has appeared before you. And in addition to the pollution, I don't know if any of you have ever been to that area, but if you have, just to paint a picture for you, directly across the street, Beach Street on the Fort Worth side, they have luxury apartments. And just down from there, they also have, I guess, part of the golf course, Fort Worth. Just to the north of us, there's another residential area. To the south of us, there's Big Fossil Creek, which is somewhat polluted now. We have the bridge, and the property that's in question is just north of the bridge. And just north of that, there's a road barricade, which would preclude any type of a driveway for any type of business. And looking at the property, it doesn't appear to me that it could be used for anything other than maybe an extension of the daycare center or part of the Buffalo Creek Park. I don't know. I mean, I cannot understand why the property wasn't purchased by the school, because, you know, the location, it just doesn't seem that it could be used for anything else. That particular corner of Haltom City, the northwest corner, I think is probably one of the best parts of Haltom City, residentially. And if you come off the hill there, past the Motorola plant, you drop down, you see the medium there with the pear trees when they're in bloom. It's just a beautiful part of the city. And there are no businesses there until you get up there to the Sonic. And to put a business right there in the middle of what is strictly residential, to me would be just a big mistake and wouldn't contribute to the beautification of Haltom City. And I think at this point we're trying to, we don't want to overwork Ben at this point. I mean, I think he probably has enough to do now, so that's just a few of my comments.
Members of the council, any questions, comments for Mr. North? Thank you, Mr. North. Anyone else in the audience wishing, Councilmember Jennings?
So while he's coming up, I have one more question for staff. James, people have mentioned that this was under the control of the Burville Independent School District. Was this property sold under a tax?
It's my understanding, yes, that this was auctioned property.
So the school district did own it and they sold it at auction?
Right.
Thank you.
Mr. Dunn, if you will, give us your name and address for the record, and I believe your wife's already told us where your property stands in relation to this piece of property under consideration.
Bill Dunn, 4000 Falcon Ridge Drive. I did a little research on the property, and Birdville School District foreclosed on it for back taxes and sold it at the courthouse steps. And that's where the current owner acquired it. There are a number of issues here. I'm going to try to just wrap it up pretty quick. One, and perhaps the most important one, is a safety issue relating to ingress, egress to this piece of property, that between the bridge and Silver Sage, when there's no other accesses being provided to beach in that area. It's safe at the courtyard to turn right and go east on Silver Sage and then enter their premises from Silver Sage. I think you have a very serious safety issue there. Even without this piece of property coming up for consideration, I thought when the traffic light was put in at Beach and Fossil Creek that we would see slower traffic on Beach, but driving it every day, I can tell you we don't. I'm sure that there are people doing 55, 60 miles an hour in there, and if you're on Silver Sage trying to get on Beach, it's just virtually impossible between 4 and 6 o'clock. A lot of times I've taken a right and gone up to the light and got into the shopping center and come back because you can't get across. It is the border between Haltom City and Fort Worth, and I don't know where the city limit line exactly is, if it's in the middle of the beach or if it's on the east side of beach or where.
East side.
So I don't know if you might not have a situation where Haltom City would be partially responsible for any expenses connected with the traffic light there.
I believe at that particular point, Mr. Dunn, if I might interrupt, the Haltom City property line is at the curb. Is that correct, Greg?
Okay. So then the city of Fort Worth would be responsible for any traffic light. However, there is no, the Silver Sage dead ends at Beach. Not dead ends, but it ends. It doesn't go on west beyond there. So I kind of see the city of Fort Worth not making a very high priority of putting a light there that would really serve Haltom City citizens. I talked to the corporate office of Children's Courtyard, Mr. Jim Mills. His phone number is 817-784-9947. They tried to buy this piece of property from the prior owner, and the price was, they could never reach agreement. Mr. Kaleo wants to, as an investor, he could contact Mr. Mills. He has a buyer there that would be interested in buying the property and expanding the children's play yard at Children's Courtyard. The other things that my friends and neighbors have said, I'm in agreement with, and I appreciate your consideration of our viewpoint. Mr. Kaleo is an investor with many real estate investments. All of us, these are our homes and our biggest real estate investment. Thank you.
Before you leave, Councilmember Jennings has his light
One
on.
question for you, Mr. Dunn. It appears you've done quite a bit of research there, and you did mention that you had looked into the property being sold by the Birdville Independent School District at auction. Do you, by chance, know what the property was sold for at auction?
No, but that's easy enough to find.
All
I didn't get that.
I just thought you might have it.
I just, if I'd known it was going to go that way, we might have got together and bought it.
Thank you, sir.
Any further questions by the council for Mr. Dunn? Anyone else in the audience wishing to speak against this request? Okay. There being Councilmember Williams.
You in line for a motion?
As soon as I close the public hearing, I am in line for a motion.
Not to rush you along.
The public hearing is closed and ready for a motion.
Okay. Weighing the, we've got 5 out of 12 citizens that came up and stated their interest in this, and this is just the ones that came forward. There's going to be other people involved in this that live back up in that section, and I think the council will attest that I'm probably business friendly or try to be as business friendly as I can, and I've looked at the layout of this property, and I've tried to think of something that would go there. and fit in. But when you get a street that's that close to the corner and no more width than what you have upon the property there for pulling in, pulling out, I would want to vote to deny this.
Okay, we have a motion to deny this request. Councilmember Markham.
Thank you, Mayor. Second.
Councilmember Henderson.
That was first, second, Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Councilmember Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I would like to make note for the record that due to the fact that Planning and Zoning Commission voted to deny this, that it would take a supermajority of the council to override that vote were we to do so. Certainly, in line with what Mayor Pro Tem Williams said, you know, as a property owner, you deserve the right to be able to build on your property. We have an obligation to the citizens of Haltom City for what we deem to be the best interest of the entire community. I am certainly concerned with the safety related issues there. Although we do not have control over what the city of Fort Worth does as far as lights go, we do have control over the zoning of that particular piece of property. I would urge you to get in contact with the people that own the daycare center. Here again, it's your property and you can do with it as you please, but I just can't see a commercial business with this particular council. I can't see a commercial business going in there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion, a second on the floor. Any further discussion? The motion is to deny, and Councilmember Jennings is correct. It takes a supermajority, which is 6 votes, to override the Planning and Zoning Commission to deny. Gentlemen,
Mayor,
what is your?
A voting yes will be to vote to deny it, or voting no.
What was your motion?
I voted to deny.
Okay, so if you vote yes,
that's
the
agreeing
vote
to
is
deny.
to deny.
Yes, sir.
Okay, everyone clear? If you will, gentlemen. And that carries by unanimous vote to deny this request. Item number 12, Mr. Pliska.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council. This item is Z-006-02, consideration and/or action regarding the application of Mr. Charles Russell on behalf of the City of Haltom City for a zoning change request from the C1, C2 commercial districts and SF2 single-family residential district to the C3 commercial district on lots 4A, 4B, 5, and 6, MC Smith Edition, located on the north side of Broadway Avenue, locally known as 4839 Broadway Avenue. The city is requesting a zoning change in order to develop the site for the future expansion of the recreation center. This property will be platted for this expansion. The site currently has 3 zoning categories, and the designated use for this site requires a C3 commercial district zoning. Planning and Zoning Commission at their meeting on February 12, 2002 voted unanimously to approve item number Z-006-02.
Thank you, Mr. Pliska, for that presentation. I now open the public hearing on this item. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak either for or against this request? Okay, there being no one to speak either for or against, I close the public hearing. I move to the corresponding motion. Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. That's to approve ordinance 02-002-015-15.
Councilmember Jennings, I believe
For a
you
second.
have your light on next.
Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Averett.
That was for a second, Mayor.
Councilmember Hurley.
That was for a second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. Any discussion on the motion? There being none, register your vote, and the motion passes. We come now to the announcements, events portion of our meeting. Our city engineer, I believe, has an announcement to make at this time that I think will be of interest to all of us here in Haltom City.
As most of the community is aware, and if they're not aware, let me be the first to tell you that Haltom City is reconstructing our Public Works facility at Higgins Lane and Hollis. Next Monday, April the 1st, at 6:30 in the library, the Director of Public Works, the city's architect for the project, Quorum Architects, and myself will be hosting a public meeting. The public is invited to attend so we can hear their input. Specifically, I would like to extend this invitation to those residents and property owners that adjoin the current site because we'd like to be good neighbors, and we'd like for the eventual product to be a win-win situation between both us at the Public Works facility and our adjoining neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg, and we do encourage all of our citizens to be there. We're pretty excited about what's going to be taking place down in the Public Works area. Councilmember Williams, I believe you have an announcement about Springfest.
Thank you, Mayor. Saturday, last Saturday, the 23rd of March, we had Springfest in the park, Haltom Road Park. I lost count. I'm going to estimate we had around 1,200 people there. I'd like to thank George Fowler and his Park and Rec Department, Paul Strong, and the Park and Rec Board, and all the volunteers and the different boards. I think we had every board represented at the Springfest. It was a success, and just want to let those that didn't get to come by say you really missed a good time, and to tell you that I've asked to come before the park board next Tuesday night, and we're going to see if we can have a picnic in the park July the 4th. And I also want to thank Lone Star Music for coming out and entertaining. There were some other entertainers, if the council can remember any of their names, we'll tell you, but we had a really good time out there. If you didn't come, you missed a good time.
I'll second what the council members just said. That was a very neat experience there, and we're looking forward to the one next year and to the possibility this July 4th. A couple of more announcements. The first I want to make regarding something I did in addition to the Spring Fest. A little bit earlier in the day, I had the privilege of being part of the opening ceremony for the Northeast Optimist 50th anniversary celebration up on their property just north of Loop 820 at Highway 377. 50 years they've been in Haltom City, working with the young people and making a difference in a lot of young people's lives. They told me that in that 50-year period of time, they've had the privilege of serving 40,000 young men in their programs, and they have an outstanding program, and my congratulations to them and for their dedication to the youth of Haltom City in this area. In addition, we have a number of other youth associations that work through Mr. Fowler at the Recreation Center, and they've been here for a long time, and they too do a commendable job. So to all of those, not only Northeast Optimists, but all the other sports leagues that we have in Haltom City, thank you very much for all of the work you do with the young people. That is a tremendous investment and is time well spent. The final announcement I know that we have to make tonight has to do with last Tuesday night. I don't know where you were, but if you were anywhere, you remember we had a little bit of rain. We had about 6.5 inches, and we had the forecast of another 6 coming, but fortunately somebody smiled on us and the clouds parted, and some of them went south and some went north, and we escaped the brunt of that second. We had enough problems with 6.5 inches of rain, and we really would have had some problems over the next few hours had we had another 6 inches or so as had been forecast. During that time period, I had an opportunity for the first time since I've been elected mayor to see Haltom City in action in an emergency situation. I had the opportunity to be with Fire Chief McIntyre and Fire Marshal Charlie Langham in the police briefing room where they set up the Emergency Operations Center. And I got just a small peek into the kind of work and the precision with which they approach that. And I can assure you Haltom City is in good hands. However, that's not the only place there was significant activity, and that's not the only people who really stepped up and closed ranks to help address the issue in Haltom City. I know the Mobile Crime Watch was out. I know the police department were taking care of their business during this time period, as well as the fire department. We had council members wading in water waist deep up in the trailer park helping evacuate. And the pulling together of this community when the chips are down is part of what makes Haltom City a very, very special place. Councilmember Williams, I believe you had a comment or two to make regarding the trailer park, and then I believe our city manager might have a comment or two he'd like to make. And by the way, our new city manager got, I started to say a baptism by fire, but it wasn't by fire, it was by water. He got to see firsthand what 6 inches of rain in a short period of time does to Haltom City. So Councilmember Williams and then Mr. Torres.
I know Mr. Torres probably feels pretty secure in his job now that a couple of council members hadn't that close to the water and didn't push him in. So, but I want to thank the police department and the fire department, echo what the mayor said. We have a super group of guys out there and gals doing the job. But probably the thing that got me the most was to get a call at 8 o'clock at home, and it's the city manager telling me we've got an emergency up north. We've got a city manager that cares enough that he gets out and goes up to where the problem is and gets out there. He looks very nice in a yellow rain slicker with no hat on. But Richard, I want to thank you for coming out. And that was very thoughtful of you, and I think you're doing a super job.
Thank you. I haven't been on the job very long, and we've already made national news. It's not really the best way to make national news. I do envision us making a name for ourselves, but in a much more positive way than what we had to experience last week. I didn't really contribute in any way to the events that last Tuesday night, but I was just out there watching our guys work, and I can honestly say that the fire department, those guys are well qualified, great group of guys, and it was just a very enjoying to sit there and watch them at work and just staying back and not getting in anybody's way. I will probably be doing a lot of that. I'll be out watching and seeing and trying to get an understanding of some of the problems we have here in Haltom City, and hopefully make some kind of recommendations about what we can do to improve the situation out there. There are a lot of trouble areas in town, not only where I was up on the north end of town in the mobile home park, but back on the south side of town too. There were a number of other areas we were watching pretty closely, and really gave me a hard lesson about some of the drainage projects that are needed here. And so I hope to work with this council and citizens to do what we can to improve some of those. I also want to just kind of throw in one last thank you for the council and the staff and citizens who gave me a reception that same evening last Tuesday night, a little earlier in the evening. I was dressed up, but what a way to end that night and that day for me. So I appreciate it, and we'll hopefully do a whole lot more of that before it's all over.
Thank you very much. I always hesitate to start mentioning people who stepped forward and did their job and did it well and who went above and beyond, because I always leave someone out. And Chuck Kendrick, I suspect you and your crew were pretty busy that night, and so in our list of heroes that we had that night, you and your crew and what you did was deeply appreciated as well. So thanks to everyone. A bad situation was made better. Members of the council, any further comments regarding last Tuesday night? We have the next 4 items. 3 of those 4 may take a while. Gentlemen, do we need to take 5? If we could, the time is 8:35. Let's be back here at 8:40, if you would, please. Convened in open session, and in my haste a moment ago on the announcements and events, I overlooked one. Councilmember Williams, I think you have an announcement to make.
Thank you, Mayor. I overlooked it too. Harlan Streeter with the crime board wanted me to make an announcement that this coming Saturday, which will be the 29th, 30th, be the 30th, at 10 o'clock to 3 o'clock at the storefront in the 3500 block of Denton Highway, they're going to be running the heat program. That's where they put the decal on the front and the back and the side of your cars. And if you're out, if your car is going from 1 to 5 during the morning, early morning, and the police see it, they have the right to stop it, because these people shouldn't be out that time. They're usually in bed. And Mr. Streeter tells me that the process they're going to do Saturday, if you went somewhere and had this done, it cost about $300 to have it done. And he said they've got a special on these Saturday that they're running absolutely free. So that's in the 3500 block of Denton Highway. That's put on by the Haltom City Police Department, the Crime Prevention Board. And I give up. 3500 Denton Highway, 10 to 3.
A very worthwhile program, and I intend to be there. That's my plan. Item number 13, the Audit Committee selection. Mr. Torres, would you like to introduce this subject for us, please?
Our Finance Director, Pat Elfrink, will address this one for us, Mayor.
Mayor and Council, each year, an outside independent audit firm comes to our city after we close our books on September 30th, and they have a team of people who go over everything in great detail. They try to make sure that we're doing things in the proper manner according to generally accepted accounting principles. They advise us in areas where we could perhaps do our job better, and they make a critical analysis of our internal controls to try and ensure that there's no fraud or deception going on as we handle the taxpayers' money. We have a special obligation. We're dealing with other people's money. As a culmination of that project, we have finished the audit document, and we need to begin the process to present it to council. And how we do that is we have an audit committee which consists of 3 council members and an alternate. The city manager is on this committee, myself, and a couple of our accounting staff, as along with a representative of our outside auditing firm, which is Rylander, Clay, and Opitz, a local firm in Fort Worth with quite a good reputation and standing in this profession. And what I'd like to ask is that the council nominate 4 of its members to serve on this committee. It won't take an awful lot of time. We'll have the document presented to you. You'll have an opportunity to ask questions of staff. You'll have an opportunity to ask questions of our outside auditor. We even make a point of staff excusing ourselves if it's so requested, so that the council can ask questions of the auditor without us present. But if I could, please, if we could have 3 members of the committee appointed and 1 alternate, and I believe we did discuss this issue in pre-council, so we have those people's names.
Councilmember Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to nominate Councilmember Philip Jennings, Councilmember Tracy Henderson, and Councilmember David Averitt to be the serving members on that board, please.
And who was the alternate?
Someone else will have to do that. I will volunteer to be the alternate.
Okay. Is that in the form of a motion?
Yes, sir, it is.
I need a second. Councilmember Averitt?
I'll second that motion, Mayor.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? You would register your vote. And the motion passes. Item number 14 was placed on the agenda by Councilmember Patino to put a freeze on senior citizens' homestead taxes for the council to give consideration and or action regarding freezing city taxes for senior citizens. And Councilmember Patino, since you've placed that on the agenda, would you like to introduce this matter at this time, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My motion is to freeze city taxes levy on homestead exemptions of over 65 city taxpayers. Appraised value of homesteads and tax rates continue to increase and are imposing a significant combined city, county, college, and hospital district tax amounts, making it very difficult for the over 65 seniors to pay taxes. State law stops growth of school district taxes when a homestead owner reaches 65 years of age and applies for this action. We need the state law to freeze all the ad valorem taxes levied on the Texas homestead of over 65 taxpayers. The state is considering such law in 2003 session. By the time the taxpayer reaches 65 years of age, the taxpayers have supported and expanded infrastructures to support city, county, and state government functions for many years. At a time when significantly reduced income for over 65 seniors, it is unfair to expect that over 65 seniors homesteader to pay increasing amount of taxes based on their homestead. So that is my motion.
Okay, you have heard Councilmember Patino's motion. Do I have a second? Okay, there's no second coming forth. I will ask a second time. Is there a second to the motion? And I will ask a third and final time. Do we have a second to Councilmember Patino's motion? There being none, the subject dies, or the motion dies for lack of a second. Councilmember Patino?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to address all my colleagues. It kind of saddens me to see that you all kind of sit silent. This begins to be a habit. However, this is what America's all about. But I want to remind you that what we have today and what we are today, we owe to the senior citizens. So hopefully in the future that you might want to consider to give a little relief to the senior citizens. Thank you.
Councilmember Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to say something, if I might. About 6 or 7 weeks ago, I brought this up, and I didn't bring it to the council. I talked with Mr. L. Frank pretty in-depth about it, excuse me, and asked him what kind of impact it would have on the city. I, like Mr. Patino, have a soft spot in my heart for the senior citizens, and know without them, we wouldn't have what we have today in Haltom City. But I asked Mr. Elfrink what kind of economic impact this would have on it, and he's sitting there with some papers, and I was wondering if I could get him to briefly tell what he told me the other day when I asked about this. It's been about 6 weeks ago, hadn't it, Mr. Elfrink, that I asked you about that, and could you kind of expand on that a moment?
In January, Representative Vicki Truitt held a meeting to discuss this issue.
Mr. Elfrink, I'm not sure that mic is on. I guess it is. Do you mind moving
Speak a little closer to it.
Please.
Thank you. The meeting was held in Keller. The meeting was well attended by representatives of many of our surrounding communities, the school district, the county college district. Miss Betsy Price was there representing the county. Numerous comments were made regarding this issue, which a group of senior citizens are working to perhaps have introduced in the next state legislature. Miss Betsy Price herself commented, and there was a representative from the appraisal district there, commented that the future impact of this type of a freeze would be very difficult to try and predict. You would have to take into account extensive numbers of variables regarding the demographics of our population, the number of seniors in a particular age group, the number that are entering in each year, and of course there will be a certain number each year who will no longer be in that group. We took a rough stab at this. My staff did. I reviewed the work that was done, and I can only say because of the variables involved, we're trying to predict what rate of increase we might see in valuations, property valuations, based on the trends that we've had the last few years. And of course, those trends can change. In '93, when I first arrived here at Haltom City, our valuations were going down each year. They went down for about 5 years in a row. But what we came up with, and this is an extremely rough estimate based on a cursory look at some of the information that we had, the 10-year impact on our tax revenues could be in the neighborhood, it's a wide range, between a $500,000 to $1.5 million over a 10-year period.
Okay. The reason I'd asked Mr. Elfrink about this, I'd talked with Ms. Price. I was downtown and spoke with her, and she said she had been in the same meeting that y'all were in. I asked her to look up a piece of property in Haltom City, and I think the property value of that piece of property was about $65,000. And with the exemption that was on it, that piece of property, city tax on it ran $124 a year, which is a little over $10 a month.
The average value of a residential house in Haltom City now, I believe, is in $59,000.
So that was a little high, the
A
six.
little high for the average.
Okay, so it's about $120-something a year, about $10 a month. And I would like to be able to not charge the seniors any taxes at all. But with the city that we live in, with the population we have of senior citizens, and I polled a few of them. Some of them are in the audience tonight, and some of them I polled, at different places, functions I've been. And for the most part, they feel like, they don't have a problem with paying what they're having to pay right now. Seems more that the medical expenses and things like that are a bigger problem than the $125 city tax that they pay a year. And we'd be better served with some legislation down in Austin to help them in that way. And I admire Mr. Patino for bringing this up, and I brought up, I dropped it. I guess I should have told you that I'd brought it up and dropped it, but I thought with the impact it would have on our city, and no more than what it was, that I didn't want to pursue it right now. And also I didn't know whether or not I would be opposed in the coming race, and I didn't want, if I was going to be opposed, I didn't want to bring this up and use it to say, hey, I went out and got this, for the senior citizens. I would like to look into it a little bit farther before we do this. I know right now that you don't have the staff, do you? The extra time to go back and research all this?
Again, as Betty Price herself pointed out, and this meeting was attended by a number of other finance directors, council members, and there were some mayors there. This may really be beyond the scope, the capability of my staff. This is something involving the work of an actuarial. This is
another outside resource.
Considerably unusual, out of the norm type of a complex problem. We could take another shot at it, but I guarantee you it would take someone on my staff a considerable amount of time to do this justice, to bring you back an estimate that we had a greater level of confidence in.
Say I'm 65 years old, 70 years old, and I've got medical problems come up, and I don't have that $125 to pay my tax this year, and I don't have it to pay next year or the next year. Is the city going to come after me for not paying that, or what are y'all going to do?
I think the council is aware that we do not have a policy of pursuing past due taxes on residential homestead properties. We do not do that.
Now, BISD has theirs froze. Is that correct?
My understanding is that's part of a state law.
And part of the reason we're doing it is because they don't have children attending schools, so they're really not affected by that. We're providing 24-hour-a-day fire service, police protection, and people down here to run the staff at City Hall. And I would like to look into it a little closer before we do it. The reason the other 6 members didn't second your motion, I don't have a reason, and I can't give you a reason for that. But I do know that I brought this up about 6 weeks ago, and one of the gentlemen had went to the meeting that you went to, had an article in the paper about it, and that's the reason I brought it up to you, because he's a citizen of our city, and I was concerned about it. But I'm also concerned about the economics of our city, to make sure that we do have the police on the street and the firemen on the job if we have emergency come up, to be able to help these people.
That issue was brought up by some of the other members who attended this meeting, yes.
That's all I have, Mayor.
Councilmember Jennings, I believe your light was on next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to second some of the things that Councilmember Williams has said. I believe that Councilmember Patino was very convicted in what he's presented here tonight, and with good reason. certainly we should all be concerned for our senior citizens. I feel that this particular issue is an issue that was brought up by a self-elected silver-haired legislator, and that's the reason it's before this council tonight. This is not the time for it. I think that it was timed to come out before the election. We cannot override state law. The state is looking into it. Within the next 6 months to a year, it will go before the legislature, and they will determine what we're going to have to do about this. My mother is 70 years old. She pays taxes in the city of Haltom City. Is it a hardship? I'm certain that it is. Is she willing to do it? Yes, she is. I think that 100% of the senior citizens in Haltom City are willing to pay the taxes. Now, whether or not they are financially able to do so is another story. But as Mr. Elfrink has said, no one's going to lose their house in Haltom City over an unpaid tax. That has not been the policy in the past. It will not be the policy in the future. As far as the non-seconding of this motion, I can't speak for anyone but myself. The reason I did not second this motion is because I do not believe in this motion at this time. Certainly we can all change our minds in the future. Depending on what the state of Texas does, I would like to see this body come back in and look at this issue again. But regardless of what happens, were this council at this time to pass a resolution after the May election, there's a chance that some of the members of this council won't be here. And if at some time in the future a majority of the council wanted to go back and overturn that resolution, certainly it would be their authority to do so. If the state of Texas sets guidelines, then we are bound by the guidelines set by the state of Texas. So certainly I would like to look into it. I would like to see what some of the other cities around here are doing, but I would not like to go out and hire a firm to go in and spend money to do a study to tell us something that we probably already know right now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Henderson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just want to expand on Councilmember Williams' thoughts on the school district their taxes being frozen. They also receive money from the state to help alleviate that problem, where if the city did that, at this point, we would not receive any funding from the state. And that's the reason that I didn't second the motion, and that's and I just wanted you to be aware of that, Mr. Patino.
Councilmember Patino, I believe your light is on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I want to remind Councilman Williams there's no way that I brought this because I was opposed in my running for re-election. The reason that I'm aware, because I happen to be a senior citizen, and my homestead been hit twice in a row in the last 2 years. Now, thank God, I'm able to afford to pay all my taxes. And with the help of God, I don't foresee that I will have a problem the rest of my, whatever years I got here in this earth. So that was not a problem. That was not the reason that I brought it up, Councilman Williams. And for Councilman Jennings, I would like to remind you that I'm too old to change, and I've always been my own person. I don't rely on somebody else's suggestion, and especially if I'm another silver-haired person. I think I've got enough wisdom at this point to do my own deciding. And for Councilman Henderson, I think that when I make the motion, it wasn't to really take action and say, yes, we're going to adopt it. I simply made the motion for you all to consider. Maybe we can enter a discussion and enter in a dialogue with the help of our staff and maybe somebody else, some figures, that we can come up and maybe give the citizens some type of relief. And I know that the state is considering it, but I think if we as a city take the initiative, I think that this will help the state decide in a positive way towards giving some help on the taxes for the senior citizens. Thank you.
It's not often the mayor gets to vote, but the mayor is allowed to enter discussion, and I think it's fair to the people in the audience and the people who are watching to know what the position of the mayor is on this particular subject. I have a special place in my heart for our senior citizens. In fact, I'm getting there myself. I just had birthday number 60 not too long ago. So this issue of taxes for seniors is going to be something I'm going to be living with in my house here before I'm ready to. But the fact is, it's going to be coming. I'm open to looking at this subject. I believe, however, the timing is not right. I believe that tonight is not a good time for us. I believe we need to watch it, sit back and see what the legislature is going to do, and any action that this council takes previous to that is premature. So, for whatever my 2 cents is worth, that's the position I have. If we do have citizens who have problems paying their city taxes, we need to explore ways that can be addressed. And we may already have one factor of that in place with our current practice. Anything else, members of the council? Any further comments? Okay, Council Member Markham.
Thank you, Mayor. Just for the sake of giving maybe not 2 cents worth, but a half cent worth, I've listened to what Mr. Patino said and the other council members, and I understand what Councilmember Patino is trying to do, but I think we need to be cognizant of the fact that this is very, very far-reaching. There's no way that we can put a dollar figure on this. If we, it sounds good, it looks good. But we still have a city to run and a city to maintain. And I think it's very hard at this time in the future of our city to look 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road. We have a lot to look at, a lot to think about, and we need to see further before this issue is taken to the next level. Thank you, Mayor.
Any further comments by members of the council? Okay, item number 14 has been addressed. A motion was made. No second was brought forth. Therefore, this item number 14, the freeze on senior citizens' homestead taxes, dies for lack of a second or action on the part of the council. And with that, we move to item number 15. And Councilmember Patino, I believe you are the one who placed this on the agenda. Would you please introduce this subject to us at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'll try something else. I have a motion tonight to bring to the rest of the councilmen to uphold the city charter requirements in section 4.03 for candidates filing for office of city councilman and mayor by directing the city secretary to declare Mr. Trey Fowler is the ineligible candidate for the office of city councilman because there is a conclusive information in the public records to show that he is in violation of section 4.03 paragraph 7 of our city charter, which applies to a financial interest in a city contract. And on memorandum, it's a Haltom City memorandum dated March 5th, 2002. It shows that an escrow agreement was approved by the City Council on September 24, 2001. The following responsibility to North Texas Land Development and the city, which Mr. Fowler is a partner in. And that was addressed by our city attorney in one of his rulings. And on item 6, on the Texas Land Development, it says, upon establishing vegetation by June of 2002, the city will release the remaining escrow, and the city can release any remaining permits in phase 4. Now, June is after May. So in other words, on this memoranda, it doesn't say that this is going to be completed before election time. So this is a public record. So based on this and other things, but at this time, this, as far as I'm going to go to my motion, and I'm open for discussion.
Okay, gentlemen, you have heard the motion, and I think you understand the motion that Councilmember Patino has made. Do we have a second? Councilmember Hurley.
I didn't want to second that, but I'd like to call it to the council's attention about the city attorney's opinion that he drafted and got a copy to each of the council members in his determination as to the legality of filing and holding. I'd like clarification on that if he doesn't mind.
Can you do that?
Don't mind at all.
Is that proper?
Please.
There is a distinction in your charter provides qualifications in order to serve on the city council. And there's a distinction in state law between being qualified to serve and being qualified to run for office. And again, I was asked for legal opinion, which I've given you. I'm not going to go into the substance of the legal opinion in a public forum, but I have given the council members a copy of my opinion, and based upon state law that I've researched, which goes beyond just your charter, I determined that under the provisions of the charter that Mr. Fowler was qualified to run for office, and whether or not he's qualified to serve is a separate issue, but he is qualified to run for office.
Thank you.
Let me, again, before we get this process muddled, the first issue before us, before we get into any further discussion, we have a motion. Do I have a second? And until we settle the issue of whether or not we have a second, any further discussion is inappropriate. So I will ask at this time for us, do we have a second to the motion that Councilmember Patino made? Okay, I'll ask a second time. To be sure, council members have plenty of time to make a second if they to this motion if they wish. Okay, I will ask a third and final time. Do we have a second to this motion? Okay, there being no second to the motion, this motion dies for lack of a second. And now if we have comments that Councilmember Patino or anyone else would like to make, I'll receive those. Councilmember Patino.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to expand a little more. And one of the things that our attorney submitted to us was a case that went to the 10th Court of Appeals on April 4th of 2000 in Ray Mae Johnson Jackson. And she was denied based on the year that she was a resident of Waco, and also about the district. In Waco, their charter, the way I see it, is different than ours. So the charter for the city of Waco establishes the qualification for members of the city council as follows. At the time of the election to office, each member of the council shall be at least 21 years of age, shall be a citizen and qualified voter. Again, they challenged the fact that she had not voted in a certain district. The court held that we hold that the voting record upon which Irvin relied is not public record, which conclusively established Jackson's ineligibility. In other words, they were trying to use the voting records of Jackson, but the court ruled that the public records on the voting was not a public record. Now, I don't know why they found that, but that's one of the things that they found. And another thing that our attorney brought, section 302, which is qualification for city council. I myself is basing strictly on section 4.3, filing for office. Not for the council, it's just for filing for office. In which it says, I, so-and-so, do hereby declare that I'm a candidate for the office, a candidate for the office of councilman at this time, and request that my name be printed upon the official ballot for that particular office in the next city election. I meet all qualifications. I meet. It doesn't say I will meet upon my election. It said I meet all qualifications to serve as a city council listed on section 3.02. In other words, at the time we signed that, that's what we say, that we meet all qualifications. It doesn't say I will meet it 2 months from now or 6 months from now or 3 or 4 years from now. This is what section 4.0, filing for office, says here in our charter, and this is where I base my argument. However, I'm not a lawyer, so I just leave it up for the interpretation of the rest of the council.
Members of the council, any further comment on this subject? Again, as mayor, I think it's important that I, because I don't often get a chance to vote, so the citizens know how I feel about particular subjects. The way this is posted is to uphold the integrity of section 4.03. No one sitting up here before you is more interested in maintaining the integrity of the charter, and that is my position regarding this. I want to be sure we do uphold the integrity of this particular section. I may have my own interpretation of what I believe this means. However, it's important that we leave the matter of interpreting legalese and legal language to those who are licensed to do so. And for me to make any kind of statement regarding this matter would be me practicing law without a license, and I certainly don't want to do that. I think it is important for this council and for this city to follow the legal advice it's given. I don't know what better we can do than to follow our legal advice, and that's my position in regard to this particular issue. When we rely on our attorney, who has been doing this for a long time, to take a look at the issue and to look at not only our charter but also to the larger picture, and I think it's important that we keep this in mind, that what is the controlling factor here may not be just our charter. It may well be state law that supersedes the charter. And that being the case, my position is that we need to follow the recommendation of our legal counselor, regardless of how I may feel about this issue. And I certainly support the recommendation that our counselor has made in regard to that, as he looks into the finer points of the law, not only our charter but also the state law as well. Councilmember Williams.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a question I probably already know the answer to, but I want to ask it for the public's benefit, and I'll ask it to the city attorney. Who is responsible for enforcing the charter?
The city council is.
Is your microphone on?
Yeah, the city council is.
City council is. What I read before me is consideration of holding the integrity of the section of the charter. I think we've done that on every item that we've addressed tonight. And I don't know what to do with this other than, like the mayor said, we took your legal advice on it. you know, that's what we pay you for, and that's what we got to go by. If you give us bad advice, you've got to suffer the consequences.
Absolutely.
And I know that's putting you in a hard spot, but I think this is putting us in a hard spot too, because this is questioning the integrity of everything that was on the agenda tonight, whether or not we enforce the charter on everything we do.
I agree, Councilmember Williams, and it is my responsibility to give you good advice, and you rely upon me to do that. And I just want to comment that Councilmember Patino has raised a legitimate concern. Obviously, from reading the charter, reading the strict language in the charter, it raises the issue that Councilmember Patino has raised. I was very aware when this issue landed on my desk that this was going to be a sensitive issue. I was very cognizant of the fact that we've got a charter provision that implies one thing, and I looked at this long and hard, and as you know, I've given you 3 opinions on this. I've talked to the Secretary of State's office. I've done research on state law. I've looked at your charter. I've looked at it several times. I've read it and reread it. And the advice I'm giving you is the advice that I think is the most defensible. The advice I've given you in my opinions is defensible. It is what the law in Texas provides right now. And I agree. Anything can be read and interpreted in different ways, but under the state of law as it exists in Texas right now, the law, again, I don't want to go into the substance of my opinions with you. I'll be glad to do that in executive session if you want to ask me specifically about how I landed on the opinion that I did. But the law in Texas presumes and prefers the right candidates to run for office. And the law is that if there's a challenge, it should come after the election, not before the election. If there's any question at all, then candidates should be allowed to run for office. And that's the gist of my opinion.
Each time the charter is rewritten, someone, a representative from your office, is there at the rewriting of the charter before it's presented to the voters. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
We have 2 lights on. I think the intent of the council or the will of the council is apparent. Councilmember Jennings and then Councilmember Patino, and after those 2 have spoken, we will move forward. Councilmember Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one question for the legal staff. Wayne, is it your legal opinion that if at any time the city charter of the city of Haltom City conflicts with state law, regardless of what provision it may be, state law would override our city charter?
That's correct.
Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Patino.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just want to conclude, and I want to make sure that Mr. Trey Fowler's in the audience up here, and I want to really congratulate you for signing up, because I think that's what makes it better when we have opposition. I, for one, I'm not too happy when a council member just kind of walks in there and just takes that seat without being opposed. So it is commendable that you want to run again and represent the citizens. In no way that I brought up this agenda just simply because you oppose me. No, that's not it. My concern is to have respect for the charter, which is something that the citizen voted, and it's their charter, and I feel that we need to respect it. And I thought that it was my duty to look into it. Thank you.
Okay, item number 15 is what we've been discussing. A motion has been made. No second was forthcoming. Therefore, the motion dies for lack of a second, and the subject has been addressed within the desires of the council. And with that, we move to item number 16. Mr. Torres, before we do, Councilmember Markham.
Thank you, Mayor. As I mentioned in pre-council, several years ago, my family sold the property that is mentioned in item number 16 to Mr. Shafferpour. I do not believe, Mr. Shafferpour, that I have a conflict of interest, but for his sake, and I would feel better in my own mind if I recuse myself from this item. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Torres, would you like to introduce item number 16 at this time?
Mayor and Council, a couple of weeks ago, I was approached by Mr. Jonathan Aflatooni, who actually provided a request for an agenda item to come before you. He represents Mr. Nasser Shafipur. I believe both of those gentlemen are here this evening. Their request this evening focuses on consideration of waiving interest charges for a street paving assessment that was done back in 1987. The principal amount owed to the city right now is $18,098.03. The interest amount that has accrued since 1987 is $10,550.81. They are requesting that interest amount to be waived. I have recently researched this file along with Mr. Pat Elfrink, the finance director, and this assessment was done quite some time ago, and it was common practice on the part of the city to do these. But we reviewed the file and didn't find any difficulty, any problem, any legal concerns with how that assessment was done. We do believe it was done properly, and so therefore staff recommends that this item not be granted. We have concerns about precedent setting, and there is quite a large amount of money owed to the city in back street paving assessments, and simply to waive one could in fact open up some doors and be problematic. So either one of these gentlemen may like to address the council this evening.
If you would, sir, give us your name and your address for the record, and if you're not the property owner, tell us what relationship you have with the owner of the property, please.
Good evening, Mayor, and
would you come a little closer to the microphone,
okay.
please?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Jonathan Aflatooni. I'm the president of Transglobal Commercial Realty. I represent Mr. Shafipur in all his real estate holdings in the United States. As Mr. Torres expressed, we have objected to the legality and the procedure that was done with respect to the living assessment on this parcel of land. And if you allow me, I have prepared some handouts here so everyone can look at.
If you'll hand all of those to one of the council members, they'll pass those down, and you go ahead with your presentation, please.
Mr. Shafipur purchased this parcel of land about 14 years ago, and he had paid in excess of $350,000 for 7.5 acres of land in Haltom City. At the time that this assessment was proposed, Mr. Shafipur and his wife did attend the meetings and objected to the assessment based on the fact that he is paying taxes on the land. He's a taxpayer in Haltom City, and if the city of Haltom decides to expand the street for some reason, he did not think that it is fair and equitable for the landowner to be charged for it. This piece of property, as you see in page 2, has drastically reduced in value. We had an offer of $3,000 per acre, which I know is unreasonable, but based on the economic conditions of that street and the improvement that has been done, really has not benefited his land, and his land has actually depreciated in the past 14, 15 years, and the amount of interest that you're asking we think is very unfair and equitable for him, because as you know, that ordinance of levying street taxes and assessment is no longer valid in the city of Haltom City and many other cities, because it certainly puts a stop on the growth of that city, because the commercial developers certainly do not want to contribute to that kind of idea. So we're asking kindly the city of Haltom City to at least waive the interest on this account so we can get it settled, and Mr. Shefpur can hopefully in the future build something on this land, and other than just, you know, letting it sit there.
Anything further you'd like to say to the council at the moment before?
That's it.
Okay. Councilmember Averett, you have your light on?
Yes, sir, Mayor, I do. As is included in our handout this evening, I am the one that made the offer on the property. Therefore, I will be recusing myself from this agenda item.
Okay, and proper documentation can be
Yes.
obtained after the meeting?
Yes, sir.
Regarding that recusal? Members of the council, any questions for this gentleman? Yes, Councilmember Williams.
I have trouble opening my mouth sometimes before I push my button. At what time did y'all come to the reality that y'all owed this?
At what time? He attended the meeting at the time that this was being assessed. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, sir. And when was that? Do you know about what time approximately?
This was about 14 years ago when the assessment was done.
Okay. And y'all came to protest at that time, having to pay for the portion of the street?
Yes. Him and his wife protested, attended the meeting, and actually protested the assessment.
And that was at a city council meeting?
Yes, sir.
And the outcome of that, I guess, wasn't too good?
I suppose so.
Okay. My next question, since the outcome of that wasn't too good and we found out 14 years ago that this was going to be charged, why did we wait till March of 2002 to come forward and try to take care of business on it? 14 years behind is a little delinquent.
Can you excuse me just a moment?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let me consult on that. I think Mr. Shafipur had come to the city a couple times to speak with a couple of officials, and he's had, unfortunately, a language barrier, and that's why we're kind of representing him in all his real estate holdings here in the DFW area. So.
Well, I very much appreciate you being here tonight.
Yes, sir. Thank
with
you.
him and him as well. But to let this go, you know, I'm guessing from 1988 till now,
well,
14 years. And if he's come up here a couple of times, that's,
yeah.
I think if I had that kind of money involved in this, and, you know, we've got to where the price is $10,000 on the principal, $18,000 on principal, and $10,000 on the interest. That means it's been on there for quite some time.
Mr. Williams, his stand since the beginning is that first of all, the assessment that was done did not benefit his land. The land hasn't appreciated in the past 14 years. And when the assessment was done, he felt at that time that since he's a taxpayer, that the city should not have levied the assessment. That the city should not go to the landowner to do something with the street. That is something that the city, in conjunction with the funds they have available, or the state funds that are available to be able to do that. So his stance since day one is that, you know, he's come to the meeting, he has objected, he's had objections to it, and he really didn't want to, he didn't feel that any of this should have been paid. And when we consulted with him, we suggested to him that we went to the city manager first, if he can sell it with him, to at least if he can let the interest forgo, so he can take care of the rest of the bill, even though he is not in concurrence with the idea that the city should levy assessment on the landowner for a street expansion. I mean, there are some services that the city renders, like, you know, the providing fire and water and sewer and street improvements.
Okay.
We can understand that if he wanted to build a shopping center on that land, and there were some improvements that were necessary for that shopping center to be built because of ingress and that we can understand. But, you know, there was just a vacant parcel of land undeveloped, and he had just purchased that, and all of a sudden, you know, there was an assessment of $18,000 done for some improvement on the street.
Mr. Mayor, if I could have a small amount of patience here, I'm going to tell this gentleman something where he can relay it on to him, translate it to him.
Please do.
Would that be okay? Tell him that had he had taken care of this in 3 or 4 years, you know, after this property, after they put the assessment on it, if he'd come in 3 or 4 years later than that, I could have seen maybe trying to do something with the interest on it. And if he felt like that there was something wrong, he should have acquired legal help to pursue that. But what we have here, we have a bunch of pieces of property in this city that are this way. I'm going to wait and let you tell him that, and then I'm going to tell you more.
Sure.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay. What the problem?
He says that he's he came during the night, I guess, where there was a hearing on assessment.
Right.
And he wasn't really, what he has expressed wasn't heard or wasn't agreed with. So he felt that, you know, if he's gonna come again before the city, he's basically gonna get the same treatment.
Right. Well, he needs to learn to keep on going on, because we're 14 years down the road, and had he come in 3 or 4 years later than that, I'm sure the council could come with some kind of agreement. But what we've got multiple properties out there that we've done this to, that when we went in, they had to pay a portion of the curbs and a portion of the road in the commercial districts, and that was assessed to the property. You want to tell him that, or you want to?
Go ahead.
Okay. I feel for him about the way the interest has come up on this toward the principal. But for it to sit delinquent for that many years, there's really not much. Now, I don't know the rest of the council's feelings, but I don't think there's much that we can do, because the other people that we have out there, they're either owing that and the taxes are occurring, or are owing it and paying on it. If we went back through and took his interest off, then we would be obligated to do that to every citizen in Haltom City that, you know, lives here, works here, you know, whether they're a business owner or whether they're a resident. And there's no way that we can go back and do that. And I guess a question I'd have for the finance director, Mr. Elfrink, you have any kind of record of correspondence with these gentlemen?
What I have here is the complete file for the Waldemar Street assessment project that was done in 1985, and with the various hearings and notifications that were done. We have a complete checklist here of 13 items. Each one of them is noted to having been accomplished. Also here, this is a rather complete file on this particular project. It has some things in here that I've not necessarily seen in some of the other files. It has copies of the minutes from these public hearings, the benefit hearings that were held. These hearings were held on the 4th of April 1985 and the 18th of April 1985. In these minutes, as we would do minutes today, the names of individuals are mentioned who spoke regarding these improvements. I've looked through them as I was sitting here. I don't see anyone from this holding company or by this gentleman's name or his representative here listed in those minutes, although there are the names of about 6 individuals who spoke in the same manner that they felt that these assessments were not benefiting them in the amount of the assessment. But I did not see their name or their company's name mentioned here in these records.
Do you have any proof of the correspondence that you had with them back in '85, or?
We do have the certified mail tickets that were sent out in 1985. I think theirs are down there, but we have the ones on the other properties too. This is a very complete record of what took place with regard to this particular project.
Now, all those aren't on his property?
No, there were a number of properties on this street that were done. I think
Okay.
he had 292 feet of footage that was improved on this property.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to yield to the rest of the council and let them get some questions in.
Okay, Councilmember Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of questions for staff. First of all, legal question. Wayne, in 1985, I realize you weren't here at that time, but would it be your legal opinion that any assessment done by the City Council in 1985 was a legal assessment? Based on the charter, the way it stood at that time.
I'm going to give you the legal answer. Of course, I wasn't here, and I can't comment because I've not looked at the specific proceedings. But Councilmember Jennings, back in 1985, there was a state statute in Texas that authorized cities to conduct assessment hearings. And the way Pat has described this, the City Council in Haltom City did conduct an assessment hearing. And as Mr. Aflatooni has referenced, the property owner apparently came and spoke regarding his philosophy that his property wasn't being benefited, and that's the purpose of the hearing, to try to talk to the council and give them the property owner's perspective of whether or not there will be a benefit. But it's the council's decision as to whether or not that benefit indeed would occur. And once the council does make the assessment, then the property owner has a duty within 30 days to challenge that. And if that's not done within 30 days, then the property owner is deemed to have waived his right to challenge that.
Okay. What will happen if the owner does nothing? If the City Council refuses this request for waiver and the owner does nothing to correct the problem of the assessment, will the interest continue to mount?
Yes, it will.
Indefinitely?
Indefinitely until it's paid. The city has the option of foreclosing on the property for non-payment of the assessment and the interest, or we can leave it there and if we don't foreclose on it, or if it's not paid, the interest will continue to accrue.
Okay. A question for the applicant. Based on what I've seen here tonight, we've gone about 14 years and we've done nothing with this property, which would tell me up to this point it was either not beneficial to develop this property or there was no one wishing to purchase this property. I don't see the development happening. My next question would be, do you have this property under contract, or is there someone interested in buying this property at this time?
We've seen the offer from, I guess I wasn't aware that the offer was from one of the council members, but at $3,000 an acre.
Okay.
Certainly is not an offer for us. It's even, I guess, it's more money out for back taxes than what it is on a piece of land.
So basically what we have here is someone wanting to purchase the property, so now,
No,
in order to sell this property, you would have to fix this assessment. Would that be correct?
Council member, that's Mr. Shafiqur has done extensive developments in Dallas. He has done a very nice development in North Hills, and eventually he would like to have a multifamily. That piece of land is zoned for multifamily, from my understanding is. And we're working with him on, hopefully in the near future, if we see a need for it, is eventually build a multifamily in there. But certainly if we have to pay $350,000 for that land, we're not going to sell it for $20,000.
One other question for staff, James, is the property in effect truly zoned multifamily at this time?
I'd have to get the address and look real quick.
Could you go do that while we continue to discuss that, please? That's all I have at this point, Mr. Mayor.
Any further comments, questions by members of the council? Is there something further you'd like to say to the council?
I'm just, again, reiterating, asking the council and the mayor to give consideration and get this case out. Mr. Shafiqur is a land developer. He can be beneficial to the growth of Haltom City, and I do understand his shortcomings. Unfortunately, there has been a language barrier, and I know very well that he should have sought legal counsel and opposed that in the first 30 days. But again, unfortunately, was the language barrier and wasn't done appropriately. So.
Okay. Mr. Pliska, you have some information regarding Councilmember Jennings' question?
Yes, sir. The property is on duplex, and it is an unsubdivided tract of land.
Okay. I have one other question.
Yes.
Would your client be receptive to the possibility of engaging in some type of agreement with our Economic Development Commission for the possible development of that land? Have you spoken with anyone in the Economic Development Department about this possibility? Okay.
He has gone to a couple of associates that he's had in the past few years, and I guess because of what has been built right next to his land, he hasn't had any partner that's willing to go in with him at this time, up to this time, for building those duplexes.
Okay, I agree with Mayor Pro Tem Williams. I find it very difficult to waive this particular assessment. I do think that the council might be receptive at some time in the future were we to come up with an agreement between our Economic Development Corporation here in Haltom City and the owner of the property, by which we could build something there that would benefit the city of Haltom City at that time, and that could be 5 years in the future, it could be 10 years in the future, I don't know. At that time, maybe there could be some concessions made. But keep in mind that there is always the possibility that that may not happen, and this interest is going to continue to grow. So if he is truly wanting to develop this property, then I think the way to do it would be in conjunction with our Economic Development Department. At that time, then this body could look at some type of a break. But as it stands here tonight, I could not in good conscience vote for a waiver.
Is there anything further you'd like to say to the council at this time?
No, I just wanted to thank you and thanks all the council members for the time.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Williams, did you have a question?
Yes, sir. I got one more question. I noticed I noticed what you said. I see the bid on the property here that was placed. approximately, what do you figure the property's worth?
He thinks it's about close to $150,000 to $160,000.
You know what it's on the tax rolls for at this time?
No, sir, I haven't seen that.
Does he know?
He thinks it's about 200.
About 200. Okay. I, along with Councilmember Jennings, that portion of Belknap down there at Waldemar needs to be developed.
Yes, sir.
And we need something there besides raw land. We need something that would be a good anchor to pull other things in. Our economic development director is sitting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows back. His name is Kent Flynn. I would like to see if maybe the mayor and council would entertain possibly tabling this or not taking any action on it at this time and letting you get with Mr. Flynn and see if there's someone in town interested or out of town interested in buying a piece of property up there, Mr. Flint would know about it. And I would like to entertain possibly doing that and giving them a chance to do that. And if we could go to the Economic Development Corporation and possibly see if we can get some sort of concession with them.
Okay, before we receive a motion, Councilmember Hurley.
Whenever you're ready for a motion, Mayor.
I believe you said there's no further comments you want to make? Okay.
Yes, of course.
Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. If you want to go ahead and be seated, the council will proceed. Were you ready to make a motion, Councilmember Hurley? And that motion is?
I move that we deny his request to waive the interest because in view of the history of this thing for the last 14 years, it's been allowed to accrue without any effort whatsoever. I don't think we can work a magic deal with economic development now overnight because we don't have his attention now, and I don't think we had his attention then.
You've heard the motion by Councilmember Hurley, Councilmember Jennings. I'm looking for a second.
Yes, sir, I would have to second that motion and strongly urge you to attempt to make some type of communication with the Economic Development Corporation so that at some time in the future we may be able to work something out.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to deny this request for waiver of interest on this lien. Any further discussion by the council? If you would, gentlemen, register your vote. And that carries by all members present with Councilmember Averett and Councilmember Markham having recused themselves. The next item on our agenda tonight as we move forward is resignations of board members. Councilmember Patino, I think you have a resignation.
Mr. Mayor, I know you brought it up on the pre-council meeting, but he is not my appointee.
Okay.
At this time, I don't know who appointed him.
We have Mr. Rudy Herrera's resignation.
Place one, I believe he's place one.
Place one.
Right. Right. I would move to accept his resignation.
Okay, you have heard the recommendation. If you would register your vote for ratification. And that passes. I also have a resignation from the Minorities Affair Board, and that is Cam Entherath, and you have the letter there before you explaining his reasons. I'm requesting ratification on this resignation. And that passes by unanimous vote. Any other resignations, gentlemen? Appointments or reappointments? I have one appointment to make. It is my pleasure to recommend Rudy Herrera for our Civil Service Board. Mr. Herrera brings a lot of experience in dealing with civil service. as someone who had worked under the system, who had been a supervisor under that system, and also who was in management under that system. And I believe he'll be a great asset. If I could, gentlemen, requesting ratification. And that passes. So, Mr. Herrera, welcome aboard. The other members of that group will be very pleased to have you as a part of that. Attendance requirements, everybody's present and accounted for. And gentlemen on the council, I'm happy to read this statement from our attorney. Mayor, I have no executive session items tonight. That being the case, all other items on the agenda have been addressed. We stand adjourned at 9:57.
Executive session item.
Good.
That is rare.